Good evening and welcome to Hello It's Us. Hello It's Us is dedicated to educating the general public about issues that are important to people with disabilities. We think that as you watch the show and see the issues and hear about the topics that we are discussing, you'll realize that issues that are important to people with disabilities are important to everybody in the community. That's our mission in bringing Hello It's Us to you. Hello It's Us is brought to you through a collaboration between the Center for Disabilities and Development at the University of Iowa, our friends at Uptown Bill's Coffee Shop, and our other good friends at Public Access Television. My name is Mike Hoenig, and I am one of the co-hosts of Hello It's Us. Keith?
Hello, I'm Keith Ruff, another co-host. I'm retired from independent living and am writing a book.
It's keeping you quite busy.
Yeah.
Keith and I have known each other for a long time, dating back to college days,
Yeah.
and through our connections at the Center for Disabilities and Development, where I'm employed.
Yeah.
This is the first of a two-part series on a program that we're very, very excited about. It's called Iowa's Money Follows the Person program. And what's going to be really special about this, you can see we have a full house here. We have a large group of people that are going to tell us about their experiences as staff with Money Follows the Person and also as participants within the Money Follows the Person program. And what I'd like to do to begin is to have our panel, which is a group of 6 here, introduce themselves. And Dorothy, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I'm Dorothy Spratt, and I live in Iowa City, and I'm originally from Oxford, Iowa.
Well, Dorothy, thank you so much for being here.
I'm Jennifer Dundon. I live in Coralville. I used to live in Iowa City.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
My name is Jonnie. I used to live in Cagley, Iowa. And now I live in Iowa City. I'm originally from Cedar Rapids. Thank you, Dale.
I'm Jonnie Cagley. I'm a transition specialist with the Money Follows a Person program. I have I cover the northeast territory of the state.
Thanks, Jonnie. Thanks for driving in.
Hi, I'm Julie Adams. I'm Money Follows the Person transition specialist also, and I cover the southeast side of Iowa.
And I'm SueAnn Morrow. I'm the Employment Services Specialist for Money Follows a Person, and I cover the whole state.
Excellent. Yeah, just can't keep her down anywhere, can we?
Right.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming, and it's going to be a really exciting show. We have a lot to get to in this two-part series, but we want to, now we know that this has been a show before, but it's been a number of years ago, and we know that we've got some new viewers out there, and so what we thought we should do is to start out and just talk a little bit about what the Money Follows the Person program is, maybe a little bit of history, some of the, what is it designed to do, and then also just some of the things that the program has accomplished. So have you all, we're going to start off with the transition specialists and SueAnn. So would one of you like to just kind of jump in? We're a very informal bunch here, so if it was whoever would like to just kind of get us rolling here on MFP, that would be great.
Go ahead, Julie.
Okay. What do you want to know first?
Well, why don't you just talk about we'll talk about a little bit about what it does. What's the purpose of MFP?
The purpose of the Money Follows the Person program is to be able to provide some extra supports and to help folks who live in facilities move out into their community of their choice. and be successful. We provide different kinds of services as far as helping them to find a provider, to provide the supports that they need. Also helping them to purchase the items needed to start a new house. And we also make sure we follow those service providers to make sure that they're doing what's in the person's plan. We have the plan to help provide their supports for them that they need to be successful.
Do we have a number of people that transitioned so far?
Yes, we do. We transitioned our first person in 2008, and we have since then transitioned over 520 people into the community.
Thank
It's a lot of people.
you. Yes.
So when you talk a little bit about, you mentioned that you purchase items and help follow through. So is this program restricted to people that receive Medicaid?
Yes, it is. The program is available for folks who meet the criteria for brain injury waiver or intellectual disability waiver, which are Iowa Medicaid waivers. What that does, Mike, is it allows them to have a funding stream to continue those supports and services that we've put in place after the year of Money Follows the Person ends. And so it's real important that they be able to continue and sustain that.
Oh, sure. But now the first year, the federal government through Medicaid then provides some extra support to the state to get kind of things rolling, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. That sounds good. And so when you and this is again open to anybody, just when you start, when you mention services and so you would basically, maybe you could just talk a little bit in general terms about, when you hear about somebody, I assume that you get referral sources from all sorts of places, right? And then you would go and meet with that person and see if they're, first of all, if they're interested. Is that how it starts usually, or?
Yep. We will get a referral. A referral will can come from a family, it can come from a provider, it can come from the person themselves. Joe is an example of a referral that came from himself.
Cool.
Joe contacted Money Follows the Person,
Yes.
and those referrals come into Brooke Lovelace, who coordinates the program, and then she sends them out to the transition specialist in the area where the person would like to move to. And then we will go and meet with the person, talk to them about what they want, where they want to live, talk a little bit with the facility where they're at about what supports they would need in order to be successful. And we would then meet as a team to try to discuss how could we get those supports in place for them. We'll make referrals to waiver providers in the community where they want to live. And when a provider is able to, says, yes, we think we can meet their needs and help them be successful, then we will form a team and sit down and decide how are we going to make sure that these essential supports are in place so that the person can move successfully. And that can include anything from making sure they have an accessible home. It might mean they might need modifications done to a bathroom. They might need a doorway widened. They might need,
Well, some things as simple as a chair or a
Right.
couch or bedding,
They-
sheets and towels. 'cause
Yeah, some people have lived in facilities a long time, and so they don't own their own furniture anymore. They don't have furniture.
Yeah.
The furniture in their room belongs to the facility. So we will work to get all of those things in place for them. Sometimes it's extra staff support. They might need a little bit of extra staffing to help them be successful. Maybe they need some extra help and supervision when they're out in the community or when they're doing certain things. So we'll get have a plan on how that's going to happen. They have to get new doctors in their new community, change their medicines from the facility to a pharmacy in the community. So all of those things, we kind of help make sure there's plans for how that's all gonna happen, so that that move can go as smoothly as possible for that person. And we can make sure that they have all the supports in place before they move. Sometimes that takes several meetings to get that ready to go and to hit that move date.
Right.
And
I was going to say, these guys do a lot of planning before
Oh,
anything
man.
happens, because there's a lot of details
Yeah.
that if left out, it won't be quite as successful. I think another important thing is that the program is for 365 days, and that's
Right.
why the planning is so critical. Because during that transition year or demonstration year, MFP can provide a little more things than a traditional waiver can. So the idea is to provide people lots of supports that they need to be successful, and then by the end of the year, they'd be sustained and be successful with the traditional waivers. So, and it's voluntary, the program's voluntary, no one has to move if they don't want to, and that's important too.
That's
I
a
think.
very important
Yeah.
piece.
It's very good to hear that the individuals are encouraged to enroll on their own.
yeah.
That's a good idea.
And we always make sure when we do that initial visit that it is what the person wants.
Okay.
And we make sure that we do the best we can to get them into the community that they want. Oftentimes, when somebody goes to a facility, they had to go where the nearest opening was, and it may be several miles. We work also with people who are out of state, who from Iowa have been receiving services at facilities in other states, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, South Dakota, Illinois, Florida.
Wow.
And that was where their needs could be met. And so then when we meet with them, we're talking more about where can we meet your needs that's close to your family, or where you would like to live. And
I'm curious. Do most of the people want to live in a metro area or country area?
you know, I think my area includes a lot of metro areas.
Okay.
It includes Cedar Rapids, Iowa City. But there are several people who will want to move to some of the more rural areas. We have some of our specialists that are positioned in some pretty rural areas, and they're just as busy as we are. So yeah, you never know.
And Jonnie, you're north, right? So are some of your areas a little bit more isolated then, a little smaller communities, or?
Well, smaller communities, yes, but it seems that most of your agencies are in your bigger towns with satellite offices. So sometimes they have the staff and sometimes they don't. Which
Yeah.
can be a barrier.
I'm sure it can, because and just getting people to the services that they need. I mean, I know that transportation is a huge issue. I know that, and we'll talk probably about that a little bit more later. But I was fortunate enough to talk specifically with. Well, I guess I've talked with all of you, but I know Jen that was one of the things that you said right away was that I had to be somewhere where I could get transportation.
Yep.
So that's probably a big part of what made you decide to want to be in Iowa City, right? Or is it that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I imagine encourages little places to make themselves more accessible.
Yeah, but now I'm in Coralville, so I have to learn all over again.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, at least they connect with each other. And Dorothy, you're from Oxford, right? So you probably this isn't too far away from your hometown, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Is transportation important to you, or is that something that's covered through the place you live mostly?
it's covered mostly where I live.
Okay. And I know you, Joe, you take seats quite a bit?
Yes.
Because you like to be pretty independent.
Yes.
I take seats too.
Do you take seats too? Well, see,
take
there you go.
seats.
Do you?
We have a
See,
It's a good service.
It is a good service.
there's always a good option.
That's-
If there's something out if our house fan isn't available.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lift vans, some agencies will have a wheelchair lift van, but they're very costly for agencies
Yeah.
to purchase and to maintain. And so sometimes when they have them, they don't have a lot of them. And so sometimes they reach out to other community transportation services to help with that transportation. And so therefore they'll use seats and some public transportation, some of the city buses in Iowa City area.
Especially Iowa City, because all of them are lifted with.
And that is nice.
And the new ones don't need a lift.
And that is very nice.
So then the trick is to learn the routes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of things that caught my interest. I know that you mentioned that bringing people in from out of state. Is that something that has been going on since Money Follows a Person started, or is that more of a new development?
That was a fairly new development. When we first started, Mike, we worked only with people who currently lived in an intermediate care facility for people with intellectual disabilities. That's a mouthful.
I see it.
Yeah. And now, about 2 years ago, we were given the okay to work with folks in a nursing facility, which covers nursing homes as well as some of those rehab facilities that are in the out-of-state areas. And so it's just been the last 2 years that we've done that.
And so that's opened up a whole new. Now they still have to meet certain criteria, right?
Correct.
As far as
Correct. They still have to meet intellectual disability waiver or brain injury waiver requirements.
okay.
Do you think because these people are coming out from our state, do you think it's because the word is getting out?
I think so. The people that are coming from out of state are people who originally were from Iowa.
Okay.
They're from Iowa, and
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Iowa Medicaid is paying for them to be in that out-of-state
Okay.
facility. And because there wasn't anywhere available to them in Iowa to meet their needs at the time. Well, and services have changed and evolved over the years. As well, some people have made improvements in the facilities that they were in out of state. And so now they're ready to come back into the services that are available in Iowa.
I think that, and then I think too, the other thing that happens through Money Follows a Person, I need to let the viewers know, I sort of play a dual role here because I administer a grant called the Connor Training Consortium, and we work in partnership with Money Follows a Person to provide some extra services that are not either authorized or people, but they try to stay within funding limits within Money Follows a Person, just so that there's enough to go around for everyone. And one of the things that we see is through MFP and then sometimes through Connor that we can put some supports in place that without MFP just wouldn't be available. For instance, just one recent example of that is that we have been able to work through a partnership to provide some support, what's called immersion training, so that an individual who happens to be both deaf and blind can communicate both with his staff and with family members. And so through our work together and through work with another agency, we're going to be sending a group, including some staff from the agency where that person participates, out to the Helen Keller National Center, so that when that person comes back to Iowa, there will be communication strategies in place. And without MFP, that type of intervention, I think I'm pretty safe in saying, just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, most likely not.
Does some of the money for the individual, does it cover technology? If they need devices,
Yes.
does it cover that?
Yes, it does. Sometimes we have some folks, I've worked with some folks that needed communication tools to help them with communication, or sometimes help them to put together their daily schedule so they can follow it. So we are able to purchase an iPad or a tablet, those kinds of things that would help that person be successful. Sometimes it's something, it can be things like a swing that somebody needs to help them be successful, because that's what helps them through their day, is to be able to have that motion. We're able to purchase some swings, which sometimes are pretty expensive, that wouldn't be able to be purchased under a typical waiver plan. Home modifications, we're able to do some home modifications, and we do a lot of that. And we also purchased some equipment that wouldn't normally be covered under Title 19 or under Medicaid.
Okay.
Well, we wanted to, one of the things that we were talking a little bit before the show went on, just kind of reminiscing back to the beginning of Money Follows a Person, and it certainly has expanded in many ways. We've been able to hire some additional transition specialists, and we also have an employment specialist that was not there at the beginning, right? And so that's SueAnn. Would you want to talk a little bit about what your role is within MFP and how you work with the transition specialists and the participants?
Sure. And I want to say Iowa is one of the few states that hired an employment services specialist. Some of the other states used money to provide grants to regions or counties. And so what Iowa decided to do was go more toward direct service. So basically, if the team and the person decides that they would like to work in the community, then the transition specialist refers them to me. And basically what I do is help them navigate that employment services system, working with vocational rehabilitation, working with Iowa workforce development, and using those systems to help the person find work. My role is all about helping people connect with local folks and local services, because we all know that finding a job is really about building relationships and kind of who you know and who knows who, and where can the person's skills and interests best be used. So really I serve almost as a conduit between, once a person says they want to work, then I try to find the resources locally to help them do that.
Have you found any static from employers about using adaptive equipment at work?
Not really, and I haven't really found a problem. Like if a person needs, say, an iPad that keeps their work schedule on it, or maybe some type of a watch that'll beep when it's break time, I really haven't found employers that are opposed to that. Really what they want is the employee to do their job, and if it takes that to help them do it well and benefit the employer, then they're typically all for it.
Joe, I was going to put you on the spot a little bit. So I've known Joe for a really long time, because you were back involved with our advocacy project back in the 90s. 92?
92 was
Cool.
the
First time. That was at a systems change meeting, I think.
yes.
Yeah. I think you impressed everybody at that meeting.
Yes, I impressed everyone. Yes.
Well, what I was thinking about with employment actually was I was fortunate enough, because I have known Joe for so long, that I got a call, I think it was from Joe or an email or something, that said, well, that you were looking for a job. And shortly after you moved, and we'll come back in a little bit and talk about each of your stories about what made you decide to move and how that all worked out. But since we're talking about employment, I remember going in to an agency and talking about it was like no other employment meeting. For those of you. Just to share, my background is in voc rehab, and I really have not done a lot of work as a counselor, but you certainly learn how things were supposed to go. And this was such a unique experience for me because, Joe, you were leading that meeting and you were talking about these are the things that I want to do. You know, whereas maybe in other situation, maybe you would have just been put into a job and you said, these are the things that I want to do. And then between you and SueAnn and I think there was a voc rehab person in the agency, you all kind of just sat there and kind of figured out how's this going to work. So I don't know if either of you, SueAnn or Joe, or I guess Julie, you were the transition specialist involved, right? Is that either of you want to comment on how that process worked? Because I thought that was pretty neat, pretty unique.
Well, Joe, is it okay if I talk about it for a second? Okay. Joe was involved in a pilot project that we had which was focusing on customized employment. And the meeting that you went to, Mike, was a meeting where we tried to identify Joe's strengths, things that he wanted to do, tasks that he did do, the contributions that Joe brings to an employer. And then at the end of it, we were trying to figure, okay, what employer could use the strengths that Joe has? What employer could needs the task done that Joe can do? And Joe has always been involved in the computer, and he also loves numbers. I think that probably came out of those plus fantasy sports on his computer. But that we generated all kinds of ideas from being a bookie to all legal though, all legal, right, Joe? We're trying to keep it above board. But from that, Joe and I spent a lot of time with Joe. We did some volunteer work for the DD Council, doing some data entry. So then we worked with that agency, and that's where I had to do the handoff because I don't know Iowa City employers, but the agency does. And so Joe found a job which was made for him regarding data entry at a nonprofit and I'll let him talk about it if he wants to, data entry doing checkbooks and volunteer hours still, right, Joe? So it wasn't a job that was there. It was created for Joe. So that was pretty exciting. That was one time where employment worked for a person.
Well, and it was very, down to how are you going to get the data entry done and what height are we going to have stuff.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was kind of cool. And Joe, I remember getting that first email. He sent a group email around about, hey, I got my first paycheck. What was that like when you got your first paycheck?
It was a fantastic feeling to be part of something that everything that the whole was the first minimum wage job that I've ever had in my whole life.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have a video. Joe made a video, and in that is that statement. It's his first minimum wage job in his whole life. And I used it at a conference, and people were going, "Oh my gosh!" So it was pretty. He impressed those people too.
There you go. He just impresses everybody.
It was just a video.
Well, awesome. Well, we are, believe it or not, just about out of time for part one of this two-part series. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to come in, and I want to thank all of you out in TV land for viewing. Keith, any final?
Have a good week out there, and thank you again, everybody, for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.